Alrighty, so we are continuing our discussion on social issues, and we're continuing a subset of that, which is on abortion, and yet another subset on that, which is the subject of personhood. And I'm just going to give kind of my thoughts. This will be more of a philosophical episode. Not that a lot of the other episodes aren't philosophical, because I kind of take everything from that lens. I think in that sort of a paradigm, of a philosophical paradigm. But this one will probably be more particularly philosophical than some others, because we're getting into some more metaphysics. Metaphysics being, as I've defined it before, but being the study in philosophy that has to deal with non-physical realities, okay? That doesn't deal with the material world, I think is probably a good way to explain it. As I've said before, in Aristotle's works, the reason that his treatise that really begins this whole subject called metaphysics, the reason it's called metaphysics is because it comes after his work on physics. And meta in Greek means after. So, this subject of personhood. What is a person? What makes up a person? Now, you might be able to say, well, I don't need to explain that. All I need to know is that, you're a person, Parker, or that I'm a person. I don't need to know how to actually define this. And I understand people that would say that, but come on. Isn't it fun just to be able to really try to delve deep into these kinds of questions, these metaphysical questions that are at like the basis of all of reality? And these are highly contested questions within philosophy, the question of personhood in particular. And I think I mentioned this last time, that the question of personhood is actually coming up a lot now in modern philosophy because of artificial intelligence. We've started to have to rethink, or at least reconsider, the subject of personhood, or what makes something a person as opposed to a non-person, because of these issues with artificial intelligence. Is it just that something can logically that something can make logical conclusions based on given information? Is that what makes something a person? Because if so, we could consider many types of computers to be persons. And, that usually doesn't stick very well with people. There's also this issue as regards things like animal rights. Some will argue that animals are persons, just in the same way that humans are. And that would be one of the bases of their trying to promote animal rights on the same level as human rights. And then how does this question of personhood relate to abortion? Well, we often will tend to say, okay, something can be living, as we discussed about last time, something can have life, but not be a person. And most people, I would say even still, would make this distinction between humans and animals. They would say animals are not persons, humans are persons. But the question is why? Why? What makes a person a person? Now, I think first off, it's good to kind of offload. I'm going to kind of offload the traditional, maybe Catholic answer to this question of what is a person. And that would be, a person is someone made in the image and likeness of God. And the image and likeness of God is that they have at least the ability to be rational and the ability to will things, to choose. And this is most culminated in the ability to make a sacrifice of oneself for the greater good of another. The ultimate sacrifice, even, of one's life, to be able to give of one's life for the sake of the betterment of another. And I think this actually, starting from that theological definition, we can pull apart the pieces of that don't need to be theological. And one of the main ones, I would argue, is that last bit about how someone who's a person has the ability, or I would argue at least the potentiality, to be self-sacrificing for another, to give their life for another, and not just, and this would be distinguished, not just in a purely biological or natural sense, like not just parents for their children, but even a self-sacrifice for an enemy, for the betterment of an enemy, of someone whom one does not like. And this is clearly seen throughout, examples in human history of various people. There are various saints who have made these types of sacrifices. And Jesus Christ, first and foremost, made this type of sacrifice. But there are many others. And I would argue that ability, and even the potentiality to do that, is only something that is found within human beings, So because human beings have the ability to self-sacrifice, not only for their biological kin and even, friends and those who they hold dear, but even humans have the ability to consciously and willingly sacrifice for someone who is even their enemy. I would argue this is an indisputable fact of human nature, that while not many people do this, some do. Some do. And unless you want to make some sort of hierarchy within human nature where some human beings cannot make such a sacrifice and others can, which I would think would be kind of an arbitrary sort of a distinction, I do think this is a very good indicator of what makes a person. What makes a human being a person. Because animals, while yes, they will sacrifice themselves for their kin, and even, for those that they take on as kin or close, if you could say friends in a sense. I mean, animals, strictly speaking, can't have friends, but they could have, other animals that they enjoy being around, that they would potentially sacrifice themselves for. But I would argue it's not in the fully altruistic sense that a human being can do it, because a human being has rationality, and a human being has the fullness of will to not only choose what one desires, but to choose against what one desires. So animals do have wills. They have natural wills in the sense that they can choose between two goods. If you set two treats in front of a dog, he'll end up choosing one first, then he'll want to eat the other, right? So animals do have this ability to choose, but they don't really have the ability to rationalize in the fullest sense, in the sense of thinking abstractly. Animals can think imaginatively, they have dreams and all these sorts of things, but they cannot think purely abstractly as humans do. So this is how we would distinguish, I think, quite easily between humans and animals. These would be the distinctions, is that humans have the ability to make choices even against their own desires, and then humans also have the ability to think in a purely abstract sort of a way. And these are all things that I would argue would attribute to someone's being a person. Now I want to continue this discussion in the next episode, this discussion on personhood, because I think this is incredibly important for us to really ponder and think upon, because the pro-life movement, in a lot of ways, takes up this argument from personhood quite often. So, and I think it's just good for humans in general to be thinking about these sorts of things. So, there we go. We will pick up this discussion of personhood in our next episode. Thank you.